Welcome into the Draft Geeks podcast, guys. Today, it's our final position rankings. We have interior defensive line, another stacked class here. 10 guys that we're going to get through. We're going to do our top 10, and it's the same 10. Sorry for the spoiler, but this is a deep 10. This is a deep 10. There are a lot of really good players that will end up on our top 50 big boards and probably drafted within the first two rounds. This is a deep interior defensive line class. Hope you guys are ready because the Draft Geeks podcast starts right now.
Welcome into another episode of the Draft Geeks podcast. I'm Max Shostak over at the Draft Geek, here with Jace Campbell over at Pat's Drive for our final positional rankings for the 2025 NFL Draft. We've come a long way in our first run of this as a podcast this year, and can't wait to get started for next year, but also can't wait to finish strong in the 2025 class with arguably the strongest position group in this entire draft class. So I don't think it's crazy that, as you mentioned, we have the same 10 guys in our top 10, but these 10 guys are studs, man. We're going to do top 50 big boards. These guys will be littered all across that top 50. So I can't wait to talk about them. But first, got to ask you how you're doing, because I haven't asked you that in 2 hours since we opened the recording of our DBs episode.
For everyone listening, though, it's been a couple days, so they're like, "What's going?
Right.
What? No, I mean, I'm doing good. A couple days passed, you did all this. So,
it's still not even a week to the draft when we're recording this, but it's probably the draft's probably in a few days for everybody else.
Yeah, no, but I think this is a good one to end on.
End on a good note. Hit the half-court shot in your driveway before you go in for dinner.
As much as it sucks to say we're done with position rankings, because I feel like we just started. The support's been great on the podcast. We appreciate all you guys. If you guys have liked it, all the support, the following, whether it's on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, sharing the podcast to someone else that's a draft sicko. We're going to be back next year. We're going to have summer scouting. We're going to be doing a bunch of stuff, trying to grow this. Obviously, you got to follow Max on his Instagram for all that stuff. But this is just the beginning of the Draft Geeks podcast, and I feel bad that, we're close to the NFL draft. I'm excited because that's the pinnacle of it, but it's like, man, we just started.
It's bittersweet.
We had a lot of content we didn't get to. We have planned for you that now we know, and now that we've started it, we started this in February, I believe, but now that we'll have December, January, we'll maybe get a little ahead on position rankings, plan a little bit more and stuff. But we got a lot more content even after this year ends and going into next year. So we're excited to keep doing this and stuff. But it's going to be a good position to end on.
It's a great position to end on. I think we will jump right into it because we want to save as much time to talk about those 10 guys. We'll start with some honorable mentions. I don't know how many we'll have. We're just kind of going to fire them off. I'll start it off. I don't know if he's your 11. I said 3 times before the show that he's my 11, but Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee, who basically plays exclusively on pass rush downs. He played 3 seasons at Arizona State before moving over to Tennessee. He's a 23-year-old who generated 27 pressures and 5 sacks per PFF. So we never know how accurate those numbers are. But the dude is a shade over 6'3", 315, right in that area. So he's got good size, and the ability that he has to push the pocket as a pass rusher is one of a kind in this class. To me, he's just too one-dimensional to break into the top 10. I don't feel very confident playing him on rundowns at the NFL level and play interior defensive line for the invisible team that I run that we reference so often, right? These rankings, we can't make team-centric big boards, but if this is my big board, I like an interior defensive lineman that plays more than double-digit run snaps in a season. So that's why Omar Norman Lott is on the outside looking in. Really good pass rusher, but just not a complete player.
Yeah, and he's gonna have a role on some team, and this is a guy that he is 11 for me. There's a couple guys below him. One that I'll bring up here.
We have the same 11.
And again, he's listed as 11 on my board. If I were to really get deep into it, I probably would move him down a little bit more, just the lack of rounding out his game. He only played 17.3 snaps per game. He was not a starter. He had an 18.9% pass rush win percentage, but only 4 sacks. So, okay, he was elite at getting pressure, but not converting them into sacks. Ball of energy. He has really good hands, super quick, ability to change directions, but he had a 33.3% missed tackle rate. He had 12 flags on offsides and stuff over his 2 years at Tennessee. He
That's
was
a
on the
lot
ground.
for a
That's a
defensive
ton.
player.
Yes, that's a ton. And like, I think he gets uprooted when he does play in the run game. You got to say when he does, because it's not often. They ain't putting him in to stop the run. He's on the ground quite a bit, and then size as a whole is just not what you would want it for an interior defensive lineman. Now, this guy will get drafted probably in the 3rd, 4th round, and he will have a role on a team as a 3rd down specialist. You can do some unique stuff with him. But as far as being the top 10 complete defensive lineman, I agree with you. I fall just short of the top 10 with me. A fun player to watch, but yeah, lacks a lot of the stuff you want in an interior defensive lineman.
Listen, top 11 interior defensive lineman for sure. If he's outside your top 11, you're crazy. But if he's in your top 10, listen, I just can't get behind it.
Yeah. And so you hate Trevor Sikkema on the NFL Draft Geek?
Absolutely not. There will be no stock exchange slander tolerated on this podcast.
Yes. My one that I want to talk about honorable mention is similar to Omar Norman Lott, and I wanted to bring him up because he's even smaller than him. He's barely over 6 foot. He's 282 pounds, super athletic. That's Aeneas Peebles out of Virginia Tech.
I knew it was. Yep.
And he's another fun watch, man. He's really fun to watch. He's light on his feet. He moves super well. He has a great get off quickness for the ball. He's energetic. His motor does not stop. He keeps blockers guessing. He has a bunch of pass rush moves. He can dip his shoulder better than most interior defensive linemen can, but he lacks that NFL frame and length. He gets swallowed up in the run game versus long offensive linemen that can drive him. His double teams and combo blocks present a challenge to him. He can't really hold his ground. He gets off balance there, and he can't really generate push in the pocket. He's really just a finesse guy. So it's just a limited repertoire for him. Like, he's going to be a fun guy in the NFL that's going to get to this quarterback. He's going to have pressures and stuff, and he's going to have a role specific. But as far as interior defensive lineman, it's the same conversation for me as Omar Norman Lott. I just don't think you can justify taking him as a, like, if you have a specific role for him and it's in the 3rd or 4th round, I can see it. Any earlier than that, I'd be a little bit concerned. Unless you just have dudes along the defensive line. But then again, if you're taking a defensive lineman in the 2nd or 3rd round, you're probably looking for a little bit more complete prospect than these two.
Yeah, Aeneas Peebles is a sawed-off, short and light interior defensive lineman, which is kind of a crazy thing to say and bring him up on a, when you're talking about a top 10, but the guy just knows how to win with his natural leverage. So he's a fun watch. Whether or not that'll translate to the NFL is TBD, which is why I think it makes him a 4th or 5th round draft choice. But listen, if he's got a general manager that believes in him, I think he could have a role for himself in the NFL. And if not, I don't think there will be a super large amount of draft capital invested in him. So I think he's worth a shot on day 3, just because he's demonstrated the ability to win. So if you got that, you can't take it away from him.
100% agree. Let's jump into our top 10. It's obviously 10 through 7 like we've done. There's going to be a lot of similarities on this list. Again, it's probably none of them except for the top guys that are in the same spot. For some reason, we have the same 10, but we jump around spots and stuff. But we're going to see a lot of them very similarly. There's not going to be too much there. So let's just read off our 10 through 7, and then we'll get into some talks.
So my 10 through 7 will start with Alfred Collins out of Texas, then Shamar Turner out of Texas A&M, CJ West out of Indiana, and then Darius Alexander out of Toledo.
I also have Shamar Turner out of Texas A&M, but he is at 10. TJ Sanders from South Carolina at 9. Alfred Collins from Texas at 8, and CJ West from Indiana at 7. Makes the most sense to start with my 10, your 9, Shamar Turner, and then we will go from there. But Shamar Turner from Texas A&M, another one of those guys on the front that's going to be a high draft pick for him.
Yeah, Texas A&M really had a stout defensive line this year, whether it's Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart, or Shamar Turner. He's the final piece of that puzzle, predominantly on the interior. I think he's an athletic player. He plays with violent hands, and he really works the top of the pocket well. I think he's good reactive athlete, so even if he loses the first punch, he's good reactive off of that point. He's a strong run defender, heavy hands to control the point of attack. I think he's got a fantastic get off. and a shocking amount of bend and pass rush capability for an interior defensive lineman. And I think he's got a really good motor. It's just a question of how can you use this guy, because he's only 290 pounds, which is a 13th percentile weight. So I think you might get a little bit of 3-4 defensive end out of this guy. I don't think you're going to use him as much as an A gap or B gap defender as Texas A&M did, but certainly a versatile piece to bolster a team's pass game or pass defense game. And that hand size and arm length, I think, is what sets him apart from some of the guys we had on the outside looking in. Shamar Turner, really intriguing prospect, and the athletic profile to potentially be a higher ceiling guy at the back half of this top 10.
Yeah, I love the length and the height. 10 and a 4th inch hands, too. Big, strong hands. 81 and an 1/8 inch wingspan. He already added 40 pounds at Texas A&M, and he still moves well. It's not like the Shamar Stewart one where you're like, oh, he put on 20 pounds then when he was at Purdue and he doesn't move well.
Or Nick Scorton.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Nick Scorton.
Yeah.
I don't know why I said, yeah, because Shamar Stewart's a freak. There's too many guys, Texas A&M. Why were you not better than what you were? Holy crap.
All of them misused.
Yes, Nick Scorton, right? He put on weight, and everyone's like, oh, man, he doesn't look good. Now he's weighing in at what he did at Purdue. Shamar Turner put on the weight. He looked fine. He's explosive in the lower half, plays through his hips. His ability to squeeze down gaps with the length and hold interior offensive lineman or whoever's blocking him at a distance so they can't get their hands on him is great. Violent club and quick swipe with his hands. Good on stunts and run games. I really liked when he's on the move too. Great extension, violent on the field, high motor. I have a little bit of a problem. I thought he was a little bit of a reckless player. He had 5 personal fouls in 2024. He's got some not character concerns, but he's a hothead on the field. Like, there are some dumb things that costed him and his team a bunch of yards, and it was a little concerning to see that. So he's got to dial that back in. Hand placement can be inconsistent. He has really good hands when he lands them in the chest, but they're not always in the chest. It can be up on the shoulder pads. It can, just totally miss in general. A little bit lighter, like you said, 290, so he can get pushed out of the run lane just a tad bit when he is taking on combos and doubles. So that's why I do agree with you. The 3-4 defensive end probably fits his game a little bit better, for whoever's drafting him. But let alone, size, length-wise, if you could even add 10 more pounds, give him a 300 pounds, a little bit more strength and a little bit more NFL-ready frame, he might be, even higher than 10. But right now, really, you see a lot of good stuff. He'll probably be a second, early third-round pick, in my opinion, to someone.
So should we slide over to Alfred Collins? My 10, your 8?
Yep. Let's, Yeah. You want to start or me?
Okay. You go first. You're higher on the guy.
This dude's a freak. We just talked about Shamar Turner, who had a massive wingspan. Well, it's small compared to Alfred Collins. 6'5" and 5'8", 332 pounds, 85-inch wingspan. Elite.
Unheard of.
Elite. You just don't hear that. That is massive size. And for comparison, his arm length is 34 and 5/8 at his combine. And then we all know the misconceptions that pro day was 35 inches. That's longer than a lot of offensive tackles in the NFL, let alone offensive guards. So he's going to have the length advantage on a lot of guys. I think he has natural power in his hands. He generates movement very well off the line of scrimmage, plays with great leverage. It's one thing to have those long arms, but it's another thing to actually use them to his advantage. He does. He's super agile for his size. He moves laterally and can burst and make plays down the line of scrimmage. He had a 55-2 tackle to miss tackle ratio. His long wingspan, he eats up running backs. He does not miss tackles. If he gets his hands on you, he's taking you down. Also, with those long arms, he got his hand on 6 passes. He had 6 batted passes. He fights through double teams very well. I do think he's a little bit slow to disengage. He gets his hands on you and he uses extension, but he doesn't throw off very consistently. He does have a little bit of wide hands. He's only started for 1 year, and naturally, because he's 6'5", almost 6'6", he's high-waisted and does have a tad high pad level. But the length, the arms and stuff like that, he's just in the, how he's going to tackle because of that, length. It's unheard of. And I think that he has something to him that a lot of people are starting to finally see. He's climbing up boards too.
Yeah, he's a gap versatile space eater, which isn't something you see every day. He had 150 snaps in the A gap, 300 in the B gap, and 130 over the tackle, which is not something you see every day from a guy his size. I do credit him also for staying all 5 years at Texas, being able to play behind Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. And, maybe somebody would say, well, why didn't the older guy get on the field? Listen, late breakouts are a true thing, and Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy went really early in the NFL draft. So I can't really knock him there. I have some questions about the explosiveness, but it's really hard to really knock that as a weakness when you're talking about a guy that's over 330 pounds. So I think naturally you're not getting the most explosive player, but you're getting a space eater that doesn't just play the A gap. He's not a true nose tackle. He is able to slide around to, play traditional defensive tackle. He's going to give you some snaps over the tackle if you want to play with more wide alignments. So I think Alfred Collins gives you the ability to play with a creative front. Maybe not going to give you so much explosiveness, but he's going to generate some pressures because of how big he is, and just he can walk the pocket back.
Yeah.
He's just not the most explosive guy, which is why I have him at 10. But there's certainly pros to Alfred Collins. Listen, we kicked off the show telling you guys that these 10 were going to be really good. And if it sounds like Alfred Collins is a little too good to have at 10, that's because normally a player like this doesn't end up at my 10, your 8. But Here we are, man. This interior D-line group is real.
It's stacked. And I mean, the other thing, pushing the pockets, getting his hands on balls. Like, he doesn't have to affect the quarterback with sacks. He can do it in other ways. He can make it hard on throwing angles. He can push the pocket. He can win around the outside. He can obviously make an impact in the run. He does it in multiple different ways. So that's a good one there. CJ West, Indiana, another guy that's climbing up, and both of us have him in very close. You have him at 8. I have him at 7.
CJ West is my guy for me, and you're higher on him than me, which I was really happy to see. I was going to text you before, kind of like we talked about in the corner episode with Robert Longerbeam. I was like, hey, you got to make sure you watch CJ West. And I didn't end up having Longerbeam in my top 12 DBs. But here we are with CJ West, both in our top 8 interior defensive linemen. And listen, this guy isn't the biggest, and he's certainly sawed off. He's got 6th percentile arm length, but I just love this guy's explosiveness, man. From the middle, I mean, he works the pocket back, but he also generated 25 pressures. And I think he's a good enough pass rusher to complement what he does in the run game. And what he does in the run game is really special. I think he's not, like slated to only play nose tackle at the next level, but I do think he's predominantly going to stay at nose, give you some snaps, perhaps in the B gap. And of course, in the A gap, he only had 3 snaps over the tackle this year. So Indiana was pretty certain on using him predominantly as a nose, which I would agree with that usage. This guy's been an elite run defender for the past 2 seasons. He played 4 years at Kent State before transferring to Indiana under Coach Cignetti, and was a huge part in leading that team to the college football playoff. CJ West, underrated player, didn't get the Senior Bowl nod, should have, and, tore up the Shrine Bowl. And listen, there's 7 defensive tackles that I think are better than him in this class, which hurts to say because I love CJ West. I think this guy could end up being a 2nd-round pick, probably going to go in the 3rd round. But listen, this guy's got to stop getting overlooked because I'm seeing him outside people's top 10s, top 12s. Oh, like sleeper in the back half of the top 20 of this interior defensive line class. It's got to stop. I think this guy's a top 8 player in this position group pretty emphatically for me, and a guy I'm willing to plant my flag on. Even though he's an outlier in terms of arm length and height, what this guy does as an exploder out of the middle with his huge weight, I think that translates.
Yeah, I mean, the length and the height are the concern here. He had a 1.73 10-yard split. That was the fastest by anyone that was 315 or heavier at the combine. So he's explosive. His first step out of his stance is great. He knifes through gaps to get in the backfield or disrupt the run. He has the most violent, not the most, his hands are up there with the guys that have the most violent hands. His ability to shock and shed, throw guys by him is one of the best in this class. Super violent. He knocks them back, throws them forward. His efforts jumps out off the screen. You can tell he's an energetic spark plug player that does not stop. I think he's super smart. He anticipates run lanes. He knows kind of scheme who's going to block him, maybe where the run's going to go. That puts him in advantageous situations. And then I think he's explosive too. I mean, he jumped 33 inches, which, yeah, it's not great if you're saying 200-pound wide receiver did that, but for a 316-pound guy, it's, that's explosive, or that's good there. I do think he's a little bit stiff in the lower half, and his counter moves lack a little bit, but he just hasn't been caught in too many situations where he's needed to counter because he usually wins off of his first step, and he's so good at throwing his hands and snatching them. But other than that move, it was a little bit of a concern there. And then his lack of length produces a couple of missed tackles, a little bit more than you'd want for him to miss as an interior defensive lineman. But disruption in the backfield, shooting gaps, getting in there, throwing guys on the ground, it's everything that I want to see in an interior defensive lineman. The size is a little bit of a concern and a little bit other things, but yeah, this guy needs to stop getting slept on. I agree with you. I have him one spot higher than you. I know he's a my guy for you, so we see him very similarly, but yeah, this guy probably needs to stop getting slept on as much.
You think Alfred Collins plus CJ West equals the guy we have at number 2?
If you were to combine them, I could see it. Yeah, like the length of Alfred Collins and this. Yeah, I could see that.
Explosiveness of CJ West.
Yeah.
I can see it. That clears up the 3 guys that we share in our 10 through 7. Should we'll read till 4, and then I think we'll go with the guy that you have at 9 and the guy I have at 6 next. Yep. So at 6, I have TJ Sanders, the defensive tackle out of South Carolina. At 5, I have Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. And then at 4, I have Derek Harmon out of Oregon.
At 6, I have Darius Alexander out of Toledo. At 5, I have Tyleik Williams out of Ohio State. And at 4, I have Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. So we'll jump to my 9, your 6. TJ Sanders from South Carolina. You can take this one away.
So TJ Sanders, defensive tackle out of South Carolina. He doesn't exactly have the weight that you normally find out of a defensive tackle. He's sub 300 pounds, and he's predominantly going to be a pass rusher more than a run stopper. But this guy's sack production, he had over 30 pressures this year. He's got 5 sacks in the past 2 seasons each. So 10 plus total, depending on how accurate PFF is as usual. We'll allude to that. If those numbers are ever off, you can blame them. Never blame us.
It's never us.
TJ Sanders, took a big step. He started to emerge as a junior and then came back and had a really good senior season. I think he's playing his best football right now. You're not going to ask him to do too much as a run defender. Ideally, he gets drafted to a team that has more of a nose guard build guy that he can play next to and work off of. But I think he's a really talented guy working through stunts, getting through gaps, and getting ultimately to the quarterback. I did think that, he can get knocked back a little bit against the run, but I do think he disengages well, has a really quick get off, and that first step and his ability to move naturally is why I have him at 6. His long arm bull rush, he's got a deep pass rush bag, and getting a guy like this on the inside, I think certainly helps any team looking to upgrade their ability to rush the passer from the interior.
Yeah, 6'3", almost 6'4", 297. So he's heavier than Shamar Turner, who we talked about. Tall, athletic build. I think he does move really well, like you said. I think he gets skinny super well to shoot gaps, get in between double teams, and make a miss. I really like that about him. Violent hand flashes. He can shed blocks. Pushes the pocket. He's super twitchy for his size. He's a pass rush guy right now, which is why I have him at 9. Lacks the great mass, inconsistent versus double teams. I think his aggressiveness at times can be used against him over pursuing angles, things like that. Yeah. And then I think he left a lot of production on the field. Like he had 7 TFLs and 4 sacks, but I think he could have had even more than that. Missed tackles. The over aggressiveness came into play. So I love what he brings pass rush wise, but I think it kind of goes into Aeneas Peebles and Omar Norman Law, although he's not as small as them and not, as a big of a liability in the run. But that's where I tend to have him down here at interior defensive lineman 9 for me, is because of, some of those limitations right now that I see in the run game. But he is also a young prospect. He's 21. He's going to be 22 in his first year compared to some of the other guys in this class. That's a little bit older. Darius Alexander's 24. Alfred Collins is going to be 24 also. So a little bit younger guy. He could develop into that and gain more weight.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the point about tackling. He's got 2 seasons with double-digit missed tackle percentage, so certainly something to note. I also wanted to bring this up. I circled a play in their game against Alabama where he drops into coverage. I think he brings you unique capability with his ability to move. Even though he's got a 300-pound frame, he carries it like it's 265. So listen, I think he brings a lot of versatility. Stunts, rush off the end, his ability to carry his weight is I'm gonna say why. Like, I know he's at 6 for me, 9 for you, but you brought up the comparison to more pass rush specialists like Omar Norman Lott or an Aeneas Peebles, or even his teammate Tonka Hemingway, a lighter sized guy. Sanders does a little more with the weight, which is, I'm guessing, probably why he's higher for you than those guys, and certainly the case for me.
Yeah, totally agree. Darius Alexander's an interesting one. We're both similar on him. I have him at 6. You have him at 7. This is a guy I felt like I wanted to like a little bit more, especially after the Senior Bowl. He had this huge knock on him always at Toledo. He's not playing great competition.
Sounds familiar to another Senior Bowl guy from Toledo.
Very true. And then he went to the Senior Bowl and he kind of outshined those things. But then you go to the film and it's like, I don't really see it. Massive human being, 34-inch arms, 6'3", almost 6'4", 305 pounds, super athletic. He ran 4.95 at the combine. He's got an NFL ready frame, long arms. He's got a quick speed to power transition to push the pocket. I wrote in all caps power. He drives offensive linemen at all times. That's if they're anchored. That's if they have hands on him. He just moves guys backwards, which is good. Resetting the offensive line, resetting the line of scrimmage, things like that. He gets linemen on their heels with the initial punch once he does get his hands on him. Good body control to get through gaps, even though he is a little bit bigger guy. Crosses the O-line's face well when he needs to get to gaps, slants, stuff like that. And then the play strength in the run. It's a little bit different than the guys we've just talked about with the passing attack being their calling card. This guy's calling card is the run game and how stout he is and things like that. And I don't want to say that that's more valuable, but I think that there's a little bit more of a route on the field earlier if you can be stout in the run, especially as an interior defensive lineman. Yeah, I do think he gets high. He pops up on his rushes. He lacks a pass rush plan. He is 25 years old. He's not the most twitchy interior defensive lineman. That's where he lacks the pass rush. And even though he was at a smaller level, he had single-digit career sacks through 59 college games, and he just never had the production for how good he was and how dominant he was or how dominant he should have been at that level. He never had the production to match it. So we've talked about like Shamar Turner and Shamar Stewart having the lack of production and stuff where like, hey, these guys are freaks. Why are they not doing it? That's the same with Darius Alexander, in my opinion, but it was even at a lower level. And it was like, why was he not having 6 sacks? Because he could just bull rush dudes, walk them back. And why was he not creating havoc and having 10 TFLs? So that was a little bit of a concern for me at the lower level.
I'll throw it back to our Gray Zabel conversation in the offensive line episode where it was, you said it, and I really like the quote, is if you're playing at a lower level of competition, you better be dominating it. Yeah. And that was kind of my concern with Darius Alexander. And listen, I know the Missouri Valley and the MAC are not the same thing. The MAC's got better talent.
The Missouri Valley is better. Valley. Oh, what?
Listen,
I'm taking North Dakota State to win the MAC. Come on, man.
You could get me to pay a certain amount of money to see that, because I think North Dakota State and South Dakota State may play in the MAC championship if you elevated both of them. Yeah. But that's another story for another day when Jace and I get to control realignment, which, geez, that would be awesome.
In College Football 25, the video game we're going to be streaming or whatever.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Don't let us get started. But yeah, older prospect, and I didn't think he dominated his competition, so that kind of held me back. And then you look at the missed tackle percentage, it just really sticks out for me. 15% missed tackle percentage this past year, and then in 2023, 19%. Those are really high numbers to have at any level, but at the level that he's playing, it's not really acceptable in my mind. The reason I still have him at 7 is because of his floor as a run defender. Yeah. He's a big player and also brings explosion to his game as a run defender. So put those two together, you have somebody that's capable of being an elite run defender. You're going to, if you're drafting him in the first round, which I don't think is very likely, but if you aren't, you get him for 4 years and he's 29 at the end of his contract. That's kind of a red flag to me. So it is very what you see is what you get, but that's fine because you're getting a high floor run defender. He had 37 pressures this year. I'm not sure his track to generating pressures is as sustainable as some of the other guys like a TJ Sanders. But again, those two guys play different games. Darius Alexander, better run defender, lower ceiling, kind of why I have him behind Sanders. But I really like the player. Anytime you can get a high floor run defender on day 2 of the NFL draft, with his height weight profile and with his explosiveness profile, that's a very high floor pick. Sign me up.
And as a second round pick, if you get this guy in a scheme, particularly a 4-down front, in my opinion, he could play a nose tackle in a odd front. But if you get him in a 4-down front and you're putting him as the nose guard in the A gap and stuff, and you have a twitchy pass rusher, I think of the Patriots. Just as a fan, right before they signed Milton Williams, I had mocked him before because I'm like, ooh, Christian Barmore, Darius Alexander, right? Like
Right.
Christian Bar. And now I love the fit of, Christian Barmore and Milton Williams because they can do
Could we
both at a
get
high
Darius
level.
Alexander and TJ Sanders on the same team?
There you go. There you go. Or
That works
Omar
for
Norman
me.
Lott and Darius
Yeah.
Alexander.
Right.
Like pair him with a elite pass rusher that is interior with him and can help him, produce some of that stuff. Because I do think what is sustainable is his power and his ability to push the pocket, but not consistently. Again, he wasn't doing it at every play in the MAC. And so he's not going to do it every play in the NFL against bigger, stronger, more athletic guys. So he can still push the pocket, but you got to have elite pass rushers around him to kind of compensate for his lack of pass rush skill.
And it's the same thing we brought up with TJ, right? It's like, hey, I really like TJ, but for this pick to work, I gotta have a run defender next to him just to make up for where he lacks. And it's the same thing for Darius Alexander.
Yeah. So this will be pretty easy because the top five, we have Tyleik Williams in the same spot. So we'll start there.
So we got the same 5 from here on in, not in the exact same order, but it does start with the same guy at 5. Tyleik Williams, I was really curious to see where you had him. And I'm really happy to see that you have him at 5 because this is a player that has been impossible for me not to like. Dating back to last year, I had him really high on my interior defensive line board last year, above his teammate Michael Hall Jr., and then Tyleik decides to return and then put together another really good season for the Ohio State Buckeyes, and they go win a national championship. But Tyleik Williams is a super strong and powerful player. He doesn't totally check the boxes measurably, but I think he checks them enough to where you're not talking about an outlier here. Moves really well for his size. I think he keeps his eyes in the backfield at an exceptional rate. He's best in hold up. And I think that's a spot where there's a lot of guys that lack experience and they struggle in hold up. They can't wait to get out of hold up. Tyleik Williams knows the beauty in waiting for the running back to make his move and then snapping off from there and being a reactive player. And he's really good at that. He's a good dip and rip mover as a pass rusher. That's not his bread and butter. He's best as a run defender, but he's capable of getting into the backfield if you need him to. And then I like he keeps his hands in the pass lanes if he can. And then he can drop down into shallow coverage, something he demonstrated in 2023. Just his ability to get on the move is exceptional for his size. Good pursuit, hustle. And then, of course, the guy's going to fill gaps really well. I think his pad level can creep up a little bit, but he's got enough reps where it's low enough to where I'm not worried about that being a significant issue. And then I thought he can leave his ribs exposed, which kind of goes hand in hand with the high pad level. But when you leave your ribs exposed, you open the door for some cheap shots from the guards and centers, which is a more important thing to avoid as a bigger interior defensive lineman who's going to specialize in hold up. If you're going to specialize in hold up and run defense, you got to make sure that you are able to be the aggressor and not let the interior offensive lineman get aggressive towards you. So I want to see that be less apparent on reps. But Tyleik Williams is a really high floor player, really good player. And a run defender that I really liked watching, and he does it at a super high level. I could not be more comfortable with a run defender in this class. I think of the guys remaining, he's the highest ranked run defense specialist that we have, and he brings enough to the table as a pass rusher to where I'm like, sign me up for this guy. I think he's a top 50 pick, and he'll be in my top 50 big board.
Yeah. The interesting thing, Tyleik Williams at his pro day, he didn't run a 40 at the combine. I don't think he ran a 40 at his pro day, but he ran a 20-yard dash. Now, I talked about CJ West having a 1.73 10-yard split, which was the fastest for guys above 315 plus. Tyleik Williams at 334 pounds had a 1.74 10-yard split on his 20-yard dash. So about 20 pounds heavier, still super explosive. I think that he gets out of his stance. He gets explosion through his hips, extension through the offensive line. He has gap integrity to hold his gap. He's not peeking in the backfield. He's peeking through his gap to make sure that the running back does not hit his gap. He has burst to the quarterback when he does win to get there. He splits double teams at a very high level. He's the run specialist in this group, and that's what you love him for. But he gives you pass rushing abilities. I believe in the first 2 college football games, and again, I say I believe, you can go fact check me on this. I'm not saying it's 100% correct. I believe he forced 2 holding calls in both of those games. In those first 2 games, he was a menace. Guys were holding him, and that was in the run and in the pass because he was just throwing dudes around. He was getting by him. He's athletic. He pursues well. I think he has very good awareness to diagnose screen plays. Like, he has an uncanny ability, like you mentioned in dropping too. He can get out in screens. Like, he knows when they're coming and he reads it very quickly. And he's, in the lap of the running back or the receiver who's ever catching it. So I like him. I don't think he has elite length for his size. He only has 32-inch arms, so it's not best of the best, but you don't see that be really big of a problem. And I do think he does have a tad bit of stiffness, which is why he's not the best pass rusher that you're going to see. But yeah, he's a stout, super good interior defensive lineman that's going to start in the run game, and he's going to be able to give you more than a Darius Alexander would in the pass rush game, I should say. And that's why I think we both have him at 5. Not as quite high of an upside as the 4 guys we're going to talk about right here, but still does a lot of very good things.
And I'm not as worried about missed tackles as I am with Darius Alexander, which when missed tackles happen at a high rate, it's noteworthy. When they happen in the MAC, it's really tough to get by. But I think Tyleik Williams has a case to be like the most underappreciated player that I have in a top 5 position group in the entire draft class. Because the 4 guys that we're going to talk about from here on in have first round buzz, but also like everybody talks about them like, oh, not only is he a first rounder, but like XYZ as to why he should be a top 20 pick. And then everybody's like, oh, Tyleik Williams. Yeah, Tyleik's good. I'm like, no. Like, we need to think we gotta carry the flag for Tyleik Williams, DJ Giddens, and there was somebody else that I'm forgetting about. Man, I
like Tyleik Williams probably would have been. What do you think? Do you think you would have had him above Jerzon Newton last year as D tackle too?
No, I wouldn't have had him above Jerzon Newton, but I think I would have had him at IDL 3.
Yeah, like above Fisk, Sweat, Jenkins, all those guys. Brandon
I
Borlis.
had Sweat at 3, and then I think he would have come in right behind Tavondre Sweat for me.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I was really high on him last year, and so to see him return to school, obviously good for him because he ended up going back and winning a national championship. So, I doubt he has a single ounce of regret because he's not going to drop as a prospect. So why have any regret? But yeah, he would have made noise last year's draft, which is what we're trying to say. This guy's been good for a while.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, there's going to be a little bit of discrepancy here. Not much. I don't want to say that, one of us is higher or lower on a guy because it's the same 4 guys. Derek Harmon is my interior defensive line 3. Max is interior defensive line 4. So I'll start with this one because I'm just a tad bit higher. And this was hard for me. There was a part of me that almost thought of putting him at 2, but the guy we'll talk about it too is just too freaking good.
Bonkers good.
Yeah. Derek, and I'll preface this. All 4 of these guys are first round guys, in my opinion. And it's
first round grades for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I have 3.
It's a pick your poison. It's a pick your flavor is a better word. What do you really want to build your interior defensive line like? They're not specialists at one thing or the other, but they all have their elite traits. So Derek Harmon, 6'4.5", 313 pounds. He has 34 3/8-inch arms, which is elite length. He had a 17.6 pass rush win percentage. This is a big athletic dude with length, quickness, first step quickness. His 10-yard split was 174. So another one for a big dude that he's getting out of the gate. He's explosive there. He makes his first step with his feet and with his hands. He doesn't let offensive linemen dictate if they're going to get hands on him. He gets hands on them, or he's able to swipe them away because he has quick hands. One thing I really like, sorry, I'm going to cough, about interior defensive linemen or edge rushers. That was really just, mid cough. But
unreal.
He controls joints and elbows. And what I've been taught and what I've heard that I really like is you got to control those things because your elbow is what extends, your wrist and stuff is what's going to control your hand. Sorry, I'm moving it out of the screen. So like if you can control the wrist and move it out of here, same with the elbow. Yeah, I'm flexing. Sorry, I'm flexing my muscle too.
Flexing your ring.
It's my Super Bowl. It's my Super Bowl ring. It's just a
Yeah.
little bad. I couldn't afford the full one, but so he controls the joints very well with his hands. He's able to get into the spots that matter and dictate where the offensive line's hands go. I think he has really good lateral agility to beat guards. His upper body strength is also very impressive. He's great on the moves. I love him when he's slanting, stunting, cutting off runs, ripping and running through gaps to get to the backside of a run or whatever it is. And I think he's reliable in the run game. He plays with the 34 and 3/8 inch arms. He has the leverage there. He does get a little bit high. He pops up out of his stance. This is another guy. This dude missed at least 5 or 6 sacks. And I watched 5 games on him. And there was at least 5 or 6 that I saw in just those games alone. And he already finished the season with 5 sacks. He could have been a 10-plus sack guy easily, in my opinion. And that's a little bit of the knock. I think that he does have a little bit of over-aggressiveness in him. He didn't come to balance. He was kind of just running at the quarterback, and he ended up being a little bit too on top of him, and he wasn't able to work back to him, or the quarterback could step up. But he left at least 5 sacks on the field. He could have been a 10-plus sack guy, which I don't know if that would have changed a lot of guys' opinions because stats don't tell the whole story, but there's a lot of production left on the field for how good he still really
Shamar
was.
Stewart would like to be a 10-sack guy.
He would.
He would very be the first overall pick.
Yes, he would. He'd be Trayvon Walker all over again. So, yeah. But no, I'm really high on Derek Harmon, but I will say I have first-round grades on all 4 of these guys, and I could mix and match them all. I just thought that his quickness, his size, things like that is stuff that you can't teach and stuff that I thought stood out and jumped out on the film.
You're definitely higher than on Harmon than I am, but I really like the prospect as well. I have a second on him, but he's one of my, first guys at the top of the board for second round grades. Predominantly playing in the B gap over the tackle, not going to give you much in the A gap, but that's not his game, man. This guy wins as a pass rusher, but he's good enough as a run defender as well. Really good athletic profile, size profile. So, with the 3 seasons at Michigan State, he came to Oregon and then just completely popped, man. 60 pressures we got on the screen. I think it was anywhere from 55 to 60, somewhere in that range, but that's just unheard of stuff at the defensive tackle position. So Derek Harmon, he's going to beat you with length. He's going to beat you with explosiveness. And then he's just got nuance to get to the passer and into the backfield if it's a run. My biggest knock on him is his ability to finish plays, and he finished 5 sacks last year, and he had 25 defensive stops, which was a career high, forced 2 fumbles as well. But he had a 26.7 missed tackle percentage, which is a super high number. And listen, he had a lot of volume go into that percentage, but I just need him to finish more plays, which is something I think that the top 3 guys do a little bit better than he does. Yeah. But if you need a pass rusher I say in the middle, but he's not really going to be in the middle. I think he's more of a 3-4 defensive end, or perhaps just a traditional end. But I don't think he's going to play head up on a center really ever, or in the A gap between the center and the guard. I think he's going to get involved more head up on a guard, or in between the tackle and the guard, maybe even outside the tackles. So I think Derek Harmon brings you a lot of versatility. Another guy that could benefit from having a Tyleik Williams next to him, or an Alfred Collins, or a Darius Alexander. But yeah, listen, I see what you see with Derek Harmon. I think I'm just more cautious around that ability to finish plays because I want to see him do it more. But another really good player. I have him at 4 for a reason. And I'm really glad that he's somebody that you want to plant your flag on, because this breakout was not a fluke.
Does it scare the living piss out of you? Anyone that we say that goes to this team, if he were to get drafted to the Chiefs?
No,
yes,
don't do that.
I'm just saying. Could you not see it? Like,
yeah, I totally can, because they're losing soon an interior defensive lineman who specializes as a pass rusher, and Derek Harmon has the frame to grow into a very good run defender as well. Yes. And all you got to do is teach him how to finish these plays. And then what's he missing?
Not much.
Exactly. So listen, the fact that he's at 4 with that kind of profile for me speaks to the talent in this top 3. But yeah,
But
I think the Chiefs, if
yeah.
Josh Connerly's gone or if they don't like him as much as a guy like Derek Harmon, I see that as a perfect fit, man. Or even Philly. Next to Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, that's disturbing to think about.
I was gonna say I think you could put him in Detroit too. I think Detroit could use more of a pass rushing interior defensive lineman. They have DJ Reader, but like with Aiden Hutchinson, if they don't have an edge they love on the field, you could put Derek Harmon out there.
Opposite him,
there's some teams that he would be scary in because of how good of a pass rusher he is and what he brings. And so I'm high on him. I would say that he will be a My Guy in the My Guy episode coming up. Maybe you'll have to tune into that. I'm not saying that will happen, but yeah, there's a lot of teams as I'm scrolling through down here at the back half of the first round that I'm like, hey, if those top 3 guys that we're going to talk about right now, the top 3 for you are off the board, like there's a lot of teams that I could definitely see taking a swing on him and seeing if he works out. So,
and then I think part of the floor for him is that Raiders spot at 37. No, that's New England's pick. I think it's 38 for Vegas. Where if they don't take Mason Graham at 6th overall, I think Derek Harmon's an excellent fit for them. And listen, you said the top 3, and I know my top 3 is kind of in line with what the consensus has been for this particular position, but that's not to say somebody doesn't have Derek Harmon at interior defensive lineman too. So
yeah,
listen, there's a high ceiling for this guy.
I was going to say, like I said, it depends on what the scheme is, what the coach wants, what the GM feels, because you could have a GM that's at maybe the Niners. Let's just say the Niners, they're an interior defensive line team. Maybe they want an interior pass rusher. And they're like, hey, I think Harmon would be more dynamic with Nick Bosa and stuff on the inside than, say, Kenneth Grant would. Not that we agree with that, but I could definitely see that. And they could make an argument for it because of the pass rushing he gives there. So, yeah, I could easily see him being, somewhere in one of those range. I think it starts there. I don't know if that's realistic, but I think that they could say, hey, do we want to take Derek Harmon, this great interior pass rusher? And unless Mason Graham somehow is still there at 12. But, yeah.
Right. And number 3 for me, I will get to it in a second, comes with character concerns as well. So you never know.
Let's get to number 3 right now. My number 4, your number 3, Walter Nolan from Ole Miss. You got this one.
So Walter Nolan, highly touted recruit, Texas A&M, part of that mystery recruiting class that was unbelievable, paid for by a whole lot of oil, and we never got to see it come together. He transferred to Ole Miss for this season, and he came together. What an unbelievable season Walter Nolan had. 35 pressures, right around 6 sacks, which was part of, what he had at A&M. He had 7 before hitting the portal. He was, I think, the number 1 guy in the portal this past year. Ended up going over to play for Lane Kiffin and had an unbelievable season. Racked up almost an 89 defensive grade on PFF, which is incredible stuff. And then a 91.6 run defensive grade, which is for a guy that had 35 pressures. That's silly numbers. His get off is what sets him apart for me. I think it's absurd. I actually have in my notes written, like, when you start to watch a player, I'm like, good get off. That's what I wrote. I'm like, wow, this jumps off the tape. And then I got an arrow pointing to that, and I said, check that. It's absurd. His get off is next level. I think it's the best in the class, and being able to do it at his weight over 305 pounds, which is unbelievable. He doesn't carry it like a 300-pound frame. He carries it like it's better. It's 265. It's a little bit of like what I talked about with TJ Sanders. I think he carries it even better than TJ does. Walter Nolan moves like a 245-pound defensive end, but will hit you like all of 300 pounds. I think he's got strong hands to dictate the reps. He's got really good athleticism as a pass rusher. I think he can get his pads a little high. I think that's something that hindered him a little bit. But the guy moving through double teams is exceptional. He runs like a defensive end in pursuit. Strong bull rusher. The power moves, shakes double teams, gets skinny in gaps, and he really shouldn't be able to at that size. And then I think he's capable of just simply recklessly crashing through the line of scrimmage to just destroy plays. I think Walter Nolan can get just pissed off before a play and say, F this, screw technique, screw everything. I'm bigger, powerful, and can get off the line faster than the 2 guys across me. I'm running right through both of their chests at the same time. And if it's a read option, I'll tackle both the running back and the quarterback. So Walter Nolan's kind of got that reckless ability to a fault. where sometimes I see him over pursue, lose some gap control. But then there's sometimes where he can hone that in and just blow up a play. So listen, I think this is somebody that kind of like the way you described Harmon has a very high ceiling. And he's got a 4.3 missed tackle percentage, which is a stark contrast to Harmon. Obviously, they play the game a little bit differently. But I really like the way Walter Nolan blends his game as a run defender and as a pass rusher. There's some character concerns about him being a hothead, but we've alluded to it doing mocks and doing our edge rusher episodes when we talked about the likes of Mike Green and James Pierce Jr., like Walter Nolan as well. We can only evaluate what we see on the tape, right? The character concerns are concerns until somebody that knows better drafts him according to those. So we'll evaluate what we see on tape. And what I saw from Walter Nolan on tape was pretty damn good.
No, I mean, and the upside's there. The upside's there. There's no question about it. No one's doubting the upside. Like I said, these are 4 first-round talent guys for me that I would feel comfortable taking any of them, at one point in the first round, obviously respectable of what the board is and, what the team needs are. But these guys have the first-round talent. And Walter Nolan, you see the upside there. I think he's been inconsistent at times throughout his career. You've seen the flashes, and that's why everyone loves him. And that's why I love him. 14 TFL, 6.5 sacks this year. He's explosive. You hit on it, the quick first step. And I think that if he doesn't win with his first step or he doesn't win with his power, his speed to bowl, that's where he stalls out in the pass rush game. He's not as polished, with multiple counter moves or a pass rush plan like a Derek Harmon is. He's strong. He's athletic. He can just, like you said, get pissed off and be reckless and have he doesn't care about what happens to him. He's just going to go in and make a play. He doesn't care. And, there's 2 sides to that. That's really good at times. He can be really disruptive and make a play. He can also kind of, be a little bit, I don't want to say selfish, but that's how, it comes across is he doesn't do his job. He's just out there, hey, I'm going to go wreak havoc. And when it works, it works. When it doesn't, it doesn't. I think he gets out of gaps at times, out of position. Better pass rush plan. I said that the consistency thing is really hard for me. If you're getting 2024 Walter Nolan, he's going to be a stud. If you get any of the Texas A&M Walter Nolan, that would be a little bit of my concern. And I guess with the character issues, that's where, hey, where are we going to get that at? Is he going to really
be coachable?
Yeah. Is he going to be coachable to where he gets to? But I mean, the twitch is there. All that stuff is there. I think he's a 3-4 or a 4-3 guy. You're drafting him in whatever scheme you play because he has the athletic ability to play as a 4-eye, as an outside pass rusher too. He would be bigger there. My comparison for him, not comparison, but a guy, because I'm a Patriots fan that I've gotten familiar with, I think he plays similar to Milton Williams from the Eagles that just signed with the Patriots. I think he has that kind of upside. He can have that kind of impact in the NFL. Obviously, Milton Williams was behind 2 great guys in Philadelphia, and he just got paid a ton. But I could see that type of impact for Walter Nolan, where he's both good in the run, both good in the pass, and he's just an elite level athlete that can cause havoc and can do a bunch of different things because he's just bigger, faster, stronger, more powerful than every interior offensive lineman or anyone on the field. And he just has to realize that and has to be consistent and tied into that, and then he can reach that potential.
Yeah, I think he's got the potential to, when we look back on this class, be like, how the heck did the Chargers get him at 22 or whatever it may be?
Yeah. Could be someone. So speaking of Chargers at 22,
right? I didn't even mean to do that.
Kenneth Grant, if he's there, I don't know if they could turn the pick in any faster and stuff. But Kenneth Grant, interior defensive line 2 for both of us. This is a really, really good football player and could be a top 15 pick depending on where people need. Like we said, he could be a pick for the Niners there. He could be a pick for someone else that wants to take a chance on him. But another guy that's just massive, 6'3" and 5'8", 331 pounds. He has a 82 and 5/8 inch wingspan. He had a 1.72 10-yard split on his 5.13. So long speed because he's bigger, struggled, but a 1.72 10-yard split. Now that was at his pro day. He didn't run at the combine. So that stat that I shared with CJ West was just about the combine and stuff. But he's a wide body D line. He was 3rd on Bruce Fieldman's freak list this year. He had 23 total hurries is what they have 27 pressures here, 23 hurries and the 3 sacks and stuff. flexible to get through gaps for his size, his lateral range. He's hard to move off his spots, dig out of gaps. You can't do it. He has natural power behind his hands. He plays with a high motor also. His hustle is off the charts. He's also a guy that gets his hands up on balls, similar to it was Alfred Collins, who had a bunch of PBUs. Kenneth Grant has also had 10 PBUs in the last 2 years. He knows how to get his hands in passing lanes. He gets them up there, things like that. I think he has quick counter moves in the pass rush game when he does get stopped. I don't know if he has a great initial plan, but he can counter very well because he's so strong. He has great hands. He can get guys off of him or just, chop their hands, spin move, whatever it is. And great overall athleticism for a size. A little bit slow out of his stance. Doesn't have, the great get off like Derek Harmon, Walter Nolan, Mason Graham, who we'll talk about here in a minute. But he's bigger, longer like that. He plays with high pad level naturally. He doesn't push the pocket after his initial punch. That's one thing that was weird for me. For as big and strong, as powerful as he is, I was a little concerned, like, he just doesn't walk dudes back as consistently as like a Darius Alexander. And I know he's not as strong and as powerful as him, but I thought that he could have, been a little bit more productive in that aspect there. So, and then the other thing is production. I'm not saying it's bad, but for a guy that was this good, I feel like he should have had more than 3 sacks at Michigan this year, 3.5 last year. It's not a knock. It's just like,
tape to production. It's like, where's the drop? Why is the drop? Yeah.
And like, it's hard to balance it. We said it with Shamar Stewart too. Like, where's his production? It's not a knock. It's just like something that's always in my head is like, why were as good as a film as they had? Why could they not get more sacks? Why was it? And that will be the question, and we'll see if it.
There's some guys where where you watch the tape and you're like, that's why they didn't produce. But yeah, I agree with we talked about it in the Edge episode with Shamar Stewart. It's like the tape's really good. It's the tape of somebody that had a lot of sacks and they're just not there. Kenneth Grant's kind of similar. I freaking love Kenneth Grant. I think, listen, you listed out a lot of the negatives, and I'm glad you did because I don't have very many. He's closer to IDL 1 for me than he is to IDL 3. He's a top 10 player in this class, in my opinion. I think the world should be a little higher on Kenneth Grant. Absolutely massive player, and his hustle and pursuit at his size, the way he plays through the whistle is insane. At his size, again, it's pretty much a prerequisite. Like, I want you to play through the whistle. I want everybody to do that, but to the intensity that Kenneth Grant does it, given his weight, his size, is unbelievable. He commands attention from all 3 of the interior offensive linemen on every single snap, which is potentially part of why he didn't have as many sacks, because he's dealing with double teams a lot. And that matters when I say you're dealing with double teams a lot and your teammate next to you is Mason Graham.
Yeah.
That's noteworthy that they're doubling. Obviously, Mason Graham gets doubled as well. But they're not, Kenneth Grant's not getting one-on-one rips either. And then I think you mentioned it, getting his hands in passing lanes is an exceptional part of his game. Guys that big shouldn't be able to jump and get their hands in passing lanes like he does. I think he's going to end up with some pretty cool big man interceptions over the course of his career. I'm excited to see him. I'm excited to see him run those back better than Michael Pierce did, because that was embarrassing for all big boys. But shout out Michael Pierce. I hope he's enjoying the early stages of his retirement. And then I think, kind of like Tyleik Williams, Kenneth Grant's really good in hold up. But like you said, I want to see him take that hold up and then walk the pocket back, condense that pocket. And I'm asking him to do that because I know he can, because he has that motor. He has that first step at times, because the first step can be slow. But listen, I'm not asking a 340-pound guy to have the best first step on every play. But I want him to see him have more highs as a pocket pusher than he does right now. He's stout versus the run, splits double teams, holds ground. And then, like you talked about with Tyleik Williams, it's a phrase I really like. There's guys that look in the backfield to try to generate action. They're just looking, and sometimes they get caught looking in the wrong direction, and they miss a play. And then there's guys that do it tactically. They look in their gaps. They look only where they're supposed to, and if a player is coming in that direction, they're ready to snap into it and make a play. That's what Kenneth Grant does. And that's good coaching right there, and Kenneth Grant executes that. Those are all the reasons and more as to why I like Kenneth Grant. I just think he is such a rare athlete for his size. And when you're on Feldman's freak list and produce like he does, shoot, man. NFL drafts athletes. I wouldn't be surprised if Kenneth Grant goes as high as 11 to San Francisco, maybe even higher.
Yeah.
Unbelievable football player and the second best interior defensive lineman on his own team.
Yeah, I know. That's crazy that we're going to sit here and talk about Mason Graham, who's better than Kenneth Grant. And it's really close. They're both really good players. I'll have Kenneth Grant probably right around 15 for me on my big board once I finalize it.
Mason and he's Graham's right around 10 for me.
Yeah. And so we'll see him pretty closely, and then we'll see where Harmon and Nolan come in, for me too. But no, I mean, there's not much to dislike about him. A lot of the stuff that the cons that I listed off and stuff were a little bit nitpicky. I think that he's got a weird build. Like, he's big, but he's not like muscular and big. He's long and lengthy. And at one point I was reading that he had bad weight on him. I don't know if he played at or if he just gained up to 350. So maybe conditioning is something that he needs to keep an eye on. I've never seen that on the film, that he's like looks sloppy and he's like been out of shape and stuff. But that was something that was reported. I was trying to look it up while we were talking. But yeah, he's good. I could see him going to the Dolphins. I could see him going to the Niners. I could see him going to a bunch of teams. Obviously, if he's there for the Chargers, I could see them snatching one up and taking him. But yeah, there's
Arizona
a lot of fits.
Too. I like that spot.
Arizona, I could see Cincinnati if they need they need everything on the defensive side of the ball. They might take one. Like they might need that would be your worst nightmare as a Ravens fan.
My worst nightmare is Jalen Walker. Thank you very much. Keep that away from him. Keep him out of Cincinnati.
There you go. And then we'll finish here. I'll let you start this one off. Mason Graham, pretty consensus interior defensive lineman one. And he's been great for a long time at Michigan.
Mason Graham is, believe it or not, a hard eval for me. And that's not the same, that's not the same way I would say that for like a Maxwell Hairston, who we just talked about in the corner episode. But Mason Graham's tape is so good. Hardly any cons. It's just so hard to look at somebody who's got a 26th percentile weight, 25th percentile wingspan, 12th percentile arm length, 7th percentile hand size, and a 26th percentile bench press, however much weight you put into that. And be like, that's IDL 1. And he is, because the tape is king. But there's a part of me, and I'm curious if it exists for you. There's a part of me that in 5 years, if we look back and Mason Graham isn't good, where in the back of my mind, there would be a voice that would be like, yeah, obviously, because the measurables suck. But listen, with all that aside, the leg drive and lower half strength on Mason Graham is not something that exists in very many prospects. He's got great feet. He's nimble, and he shouldn't be. He's too big to be that nimble. He's so good in pursuit, such a good hustler. One-on-one hold up is very good, and he's got a violent motor, and he's a violent mover. A leverage warrior is what I wrote down. He understands his leverage, and he wins with it, and he does it consistently, which is all you could ask for a guy who might be a little bit undersized. He's got a gnarly swim move, and he moves like an edge as a pass rusher. I think by double teams, he can get mauled a little bit by double teams, which he's a little smaller guy, so that's going to happen. And then he has plays where I think he can get eliminated by some of those bigger down blocking offensive linemen. But the dude's an explosive gap shooter who can finish plays. And, when you have a guy that's as technically sound as this and as nuanced, it's hard to, put him below the number one spot. But I almost did for Kenneth Grant. Those measurables are loud. So that's kind of why I wanted to ask you at the top, if there's a part of you that in 5 years, if he wasn't great, would be like, yeah, you could have predicted that. But listen, the tape on Mason Graham, I want to make that very clear, is unbelievable.
No, and I can definitely see where it's a little bit of a concern. The measurements and stuff. Obviously, him and Will Campbell took over the combine, and probably not for the best reasons because of the measurement stuff. Still tested pretty well. I mean, Mason Graham, sorry, I'm pulling it up. 32-inch arms. That's eerie similar to Braden Fisk last year. He had 31-inch arms coming out of Florida State. And I'd say Braden Fisk was pretty good. And I don't think he was.
Yeah, he's all right.
he wasn't even nearly the prospect as Mason Graham. And Fisk came in. Sorry, I'm flipping between these two things. Fisk came in at 292. He was about a half inch taller than Mason Graham, but he was 4 pounds lighter. They don't have any Mason Graham didn't test or anything. So, I mean, I have a little bit of concerns. I think naturally you have to, because I think it is a part of the position. You see him get uprooted. You see some of his struggles against double teams due to the lack of size and the lack of length. But also, I think that what he does naturally so well, his low pad level, his leverage that he uses, he's strong at the point of attack. It's kind of the, after that trickles down, trying to hold up against 600 pounds that are driving against you and stuff. That's where it's hard for him. Explosive athlete. He pushes the pocket. He wins with speed. He has quick feet. He has good pass rush moves. He's fluid. He can stunt. He's twitchy. He, can do double swipes. He can, go up and under, cross chops. He can do a bunch of different things from the interior. Good effort, great push pull move. So it's really about the frame for me is where the concern is, but it's not enough to move him down because of how elite he is at all the other stuff. So I think that it's a good question to ask, because I don't know, how high do you think he goes? I mean, I know we've mocked him to the Jaguars a ton.
So the Jags is a repeat mock placement, which means he's probably not going to Jacksonville. That's kind of how it works. And then, I think the Raiders again at 6 is an option. I think if you put him next to Quinnen Williams, it'd be pretty good. Although I think they may need more of a run stopper next to him. So the Jets is also an option. Carolina next to Derek Brown, who kind of moved out towards end. I mean, I think all the way down after 5, every team would look at Mason Graham until probably the Bears. And I think maybe that's where the slide ends. Don't let him get to San Francisco, because
they would snatch him
up. Boy. But yeah, listen, I wouldn't be surprised if there's people in the league and all it takes is one team to surprise you, be like, whoa, they passed on Mason Graham, and that could unlock a slide. I wouldn't be surprised if there's people in the league that maybe are a little lower. Like I'm not some veteran at scouting, but I've been doing this since 2020, pretty consistently since then, every single year. And so like when I see measurables like that, I'm like, oh, really? Like, you're good? And believe me, he's IDL 1 for me. He's very good, but I just can't help but being a little bit of a skeptic towards those measurables. But boy, oh boy, does he produce with them. And he's not like he's like coming out of Toledo with these measurables playing off the wall. I could tell you right now, if Darius Alexander had Mason Graham's measurables, he probably wouldn't have been in this show today. But Mason Graham did it at Michigan, did it for a national championship team, did it again this past year. And his PFF grades for his 3 years of his college career has been 80.3, 90, and 91.1. So listen, this guy can play.
Yeah.
This guy can play.
And that's been at the highest level, competing for national championships, playing against in the Big Ten and stuff. And I agree. I think that when you have the lack, this is the hard part I have with Will Campbell too. Will Campbell and Mason Graham fit in. When you have the lack of measurables, your film has to be elite. And I believe both of them have that elite film.
Yeah.
They make up for it, or they compensate because, hey, okay, he's a little bit smaller, but he plays with good leverage. He's super quick with his hands. He understands his limitations and he understands his strengths, and he uses his strengths more than his limitations. And he dominated with those things. And I love the quote by Will Campbell that said, hey, this was never my length was never a problem until people knew the actual measurements. That's the same thing. If we were to not know measurements and there were no thresholds in the NFL, which I know that's a part of it, I'm not saying to ignore that stuff. This dude put on some of the best interior defensive line tape we've seen in a couple of years. He's freaking dominant, and it's been at a high level. It's not at a MAC school. It's not an FCS school. It's at Michigan, who's won a national championship, who's had great defenses, and they've played, with Jim Harbaugh, who's, obviously a great coach. And so if the film didn't match up to the measurements, I'd have a little bit more of a concern, but the film has got to be the number one thing, and it's been so good. So
tape is king, man. If measurements were king, the Colts would have a lot of Super Bowl rings, but they don't. They don't. So yeah, listen, I mean, we'll read ours back. Mason Graham leads the way. You would think we're Michigan fans the way we have these guys at 1-2 with Will Johnson in our top 2 at corners and Colston Loveland up there. But
Michigan,
listen, those prospects.
Tom Brady, baby, Michigan.
There you go. Those prospects are they're really that good. So my 10 through 1, Alfred Collins out of Texas, Shamar Turner out of Texas A&M, CJ West out of Indiana, Darius Alexander out of Toledo, TJ Sanders from South Carolina, Tyleek Williams from Ohio State, Derek Harmon from Oregon, Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, Kenneth Grant from Michigan, and Mason Graham at 1, also from Michigan.
I have Shamar Turner from Texas A&M at 10, TJ Sanders from South Carolina at 9, Alfred Collins from Texas at 8, CJ West from Indiana at 7, Darius Alexander from Toledo at 6, Tyleek Williams from Ohio State at 5, Walter Nolan from Ole Miss at 4, Derek Harmon at 3 from Oregon, Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham, both Michigan guys, at 2 and 1. So that's it. That wraps up our position rankings. That is crazy.
That's a wrap. Yeah. Come along. You got anything else before we wrap it up? Because what we're going into top 50, which will combine with a My Guys. So that's a can't miss episode for y'all. We're gonna go through our top 50s each. We thought about doing consensus. We figured you guys will pretty much get the flavor of consensus because we'll go 10, we'll go 50 through 41, kind of that format. Pick out a couple guys to talk about. And then if we have any My Guys along the way, we'll highlight those. And then if we have My Guys that we just left out of the top 50, we'll highlight those at the top of the show. Yeah. So that'll be an episode. We'll hit you guys with a final mock. And then listen, there's now at the time of recording this on the East Coast, there is officially 1 week until draft day. So yeah, I mean, we got 2 episodes. I don't know if we'll sneak in a third one. We'll see. But those are the 2 locked in right now. Yeah. Final mock and the My Guy top 50.
Yeah, and I mean, after the draft and stuff, I don't know how long we'll take off, maybe recover a little bit from, all the watching and stuff, but we're going to plan on we're going to grade every team's draft, where we'll break it up either by division or conference. It'll be like AFC East, NFC East, or just AFC, NFC into 2 different episodes. That's probably what we'll do. But we'll get into that. Maybe we'll talk about our favorite draft fits. We'll come up with some cool stuff for the month or so after the draft. Take a little bit of time off, and then get into summer scouting once, we're getting close to college football season 2. And, then hopefully it's sooner rather than later. We're right back into the draft cycle and seeing all those things. And so the podcast it's been so fun. Like I know I reached out to you
Alive
with this
and
idea and I mean, we're growing. And like we said, we appreciate all the support. Hope you guys have been enjoying the content. You guys reach out to other people or that, and say, hey, I've got to come on here and, listen to it and stuff. We appreciate all the support. Make sure that you follow both of us on social media, and we'll be a little bit better. We'll plan next year. Maybe we'll do more content on the Instagram and stuff. We had that idea, but things get busy and stuff. Maybe we'll have something special for you next year. But yeah, this is just starting. This podcast is just starting.
When you start a draft podcast right around the combine, we were both kind of just like, hey, let's just start, put our head down, run as fast as we can right into a brick wall, which is draft day, and then pick our heads up after, see where we are. I'd say we ran our heads into the wall, and we're in a pretty good spot. Wrapping up positional rankings. We actually got them all done. That was a big thing where I was like, are we going to be able to get all these in before the draft? Check. With 2 episodes to spare. And then I think, like you talked about, post-draft, we'll get 2 episodes, an AFC or an NFC. We'll decide how that goes. Maybe like a fantasy football, best fantasy guys, and then some best draft fits, and then we'll disappear for a month, maybe. We'll see how long that much needed hiatus will be. But we'll still be active over on IG, I'm sure. If you're a Patriots fan and you're not following Jace, what are you doing? Pat's Drive. And then for more draft content year-round, yes, year-round, you can follow me over at the Draft Geek. But yeah, it's been a pleasure going through this series. And make sure you're subscribed. If you're listening on Spotify and you're only subscribed there, we'd appreciate that red button over on YouTube. Even if you're not listening over there, it helps us out. Same thing for the Apple Podcast people. And then YouTube, if you find yourself listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure you subscribe over there, vice versa. We really appreciate all of the support. So we'll wrap this up, and then we'll check back in with you guys for a big board and then a mock draft. For Jace Campbell over at Pat's Drive, I'm Max Shostak over at the Draft Geek. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will see you guys on the next episode.